Welcome everybody to the GRODCAST. I'm Young Greasy, and today I'm joined by b-wap. Would you want to introduce yourself a bit?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I know our host from graduate school. I've since left grad school and I'm now based in Sweden for work. And I'm excited to be here.
All right, well, let's just get started with the first question. b-wap, what is important?
What is important? On any scale I can think of, like to me, to humanity, to.
Pretty open-ended.
Okay, super. What is important? I think, hmm, I think what is important is just, I don't know, on a personal level, what is important to me and what I hope is also important to most humans, at least, is to live a happy life without hurting other people. I think just finding ways to get through it all is important. Um, but on maybe a more philosophical scale, I would imagine that really nothing is important because importance is based on value that each individual assigns, right? So, what's important to me is not necessarily what's important to you, what's not necessarily important on a larger scale. Um, yeah.
Well, cool. What would you say is the easiest way to find happiness?
Oh, I don't think there's an easy way. Um, Not to say that I think you can only be happy if you struggle to find that happiness, but no one is born happy, right? So, and I do think that sometimes, maybe not even sometimes, most of the time, uh, the people who are afforded more opportunities are the ones who are able to find happiness more easily, right? So, like I find happiness in exercises like I like pole dancing, but that's really expensive, and not everyone can afford to, even try it out necessarily, or not everyone has a studio that's accessible to them. Not everyone has the time to devote to things they like to do, things like that, right? So I don't think there is an easy way to find happiness. I think, and I think it also looks different to different people. So I mean, there are things that give me happiness, or activities, or experiences, but I think it's also a personal journey that you have to go through because I was not, how do I put this? I was not happy as a child, because there were a lot of things in my life that weren't the way I wanted them to be, I guess. And it took me a long time to kind of understand that things don't have to be a certain way, um, for you to be happy. So I think there are not only external things that can bring happiness, but I think you also kind of have to find a way to happiness internally, if that makes sense. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, inner peace and outer peace.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, even if there's no easy way, I guess we still got to keep trying.
Yeah. Otherwise, life really sucks.
Yeah, the dichotomy. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do?
What I do
Yeah.
to find happiness,
Oh, I was
or
thinking
at
more for
work,
work.
or
Work. Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm a postdoc at a university in southern Sweden, and I am studying greenhouse gas fluxes in urban environments. So basically, what's happening is that there are measurement towers sprinkled throughout Europe that are making turbulence measurements, like wind direction and friction velocity and things like that. And I take that information and I plug it into a model, and that model tells me where any given flux is coming from. So basically, I get the output I get is like a map that has some cells that are filled in with some footprint value, and I can combine that with the actual flux measurements to then get emissions. But so that's what I'm doing, and it's for 2 years. So short term, um, yeah, it's cool work, but the day to day is just sitting in front of the computer asking myself why code isn't working. So the day to day is not so interesting, but the overarching work is, in my opinion.
Nice. Uh, Not everyone who's a follower of Greasy knows what a postdoc is. Would you mind
Oh,
just
yeah, good
explaining?
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so postdoc is just an informal way of saying postdoctoral researcher. And so that means I've finished my PhD and I'm now doing something post my doctorate. And that type of researcher position is usually temporary. It can be anywhere from like a year to maybe even up to 5 years, depending on what different supervisors or projects are looking for. Um, but it like when you are a postdoctoral researcher, you are like by definition not a permanent researcher. That's a separate position. So I'll have to look for a job again pretty soon.
Yep. I couldn't have said it better. Uh, so, kind of building on that, what would you say is the most important thing that you've learned while doing a PhD?
Oh, the most important thing I learned. Um, that's a great question. I have to think about that for a second. I think there are definitely a lot of important lessons that I've learned. I have to think about what the most important one is. I guess what jumps to my mind is that, so for context, in my PhD experience, I had a primary advisor. Um, but the grant that I was funded through, that he paid me through, he co-wrote with someone who, by the time I joined the group, was already retired. So he was not an active professor, but still, so he was not an active professor, so he couldn't like officially be a co-advisor to me, but he more or less functioned as one. And my primary advisor basically uh, delegated the responsibility of mentoring me to that retired professor. Um, and that ended up not being great because the retired professor was very, very unkind in a lot of ways. And I think that initially that really stunted my growth as a PhD student and as a researcher. So, but then I had to go through a whole like personal journey, through therapy and, through emotional support from other people, and through self-reflection to kind of get to the point where I could still be successful, in spite of him. So I would say for me, the most important thing I learned was, to just, no matter what it is, like always find a way forward. Don't, don't let other people, and certainly don't let yourself get in your own way. And that's really easier said than done because, in academia, there are a lot of, very unkind supervisors, a lot of very unkind postdoctoral researchers also, just and unkind in different ways, right? It doesn't have to be like, oh, they said a nasty thing to me. It can be microaggressions in other ways. It can be the way they give feedback. It can be, the way they talk to you or about you. It can be the amount of time they devote to you, or the lack of time they devote to you, right? So, and it can just be like passive aggressive things that they say or do. It can be just, them treating you like you're already an independent researcher, even though the whole point of graduate school is to learn how to become an independent researcher. So when I say that someone is unkind, it can mean a lot of different things, right? So it's very difficult to, I think, navigate what the best way forward is, just depending on the person and their situation. And, I wouldn't have been able to do it without seeking help, both professional and, through my friends. But again, the key is to just kind of, again, for me, it was just like, okay, I'm doing this thing. I know that this, retired professor is going to be a jerk about it, and I'm just going to have to grow thicker skin and just keep pushing forward, regardless of what he says or does. And eventually, it was kind of a fake it till you make it situation. Eventually, I was like, well, I don't really give a shit what he says, like, I'm just going to do whatever. And if he's not happy with it, it's not my problem.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah, definitely fuck that guy. But it's okay. I don't deal with him anymore. I feel bad for those who do, but it's,
It's
good
the
to be
cycle,
out. Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Kind of switching it up, maybe a bit lighter of a topic. What is one of your favorite movies and why?
Well, my favorite movie, one of my favorite movies, I guess, is, it's called It's a Wonderful Life. It's, a movie from the 1940s, directed by Frank Capra, and the lead actors are Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed. And it's a Christmas movie. I'll say that right now. But what I like about it is, I think it actually does kind of pertain a little bit to what we were discussing before, because what I like about it is that, it's a film that is centered around, the idea of self-worth and of finding what makes you, I guess not, I don't know, I'm trying to think of how to put this. What keeps you going, like finding what makes you happy to be alive, and finding finding out if others also like value you for the same things. So like some of the film, and not to spoil it for anyone who hasn't watched it, but, a central plot point has to do with money. And basically, Jimmy Stewart, has kind of this dilemma of like, in terms of money, am I worth more dead or alive? And basically, by the end, what he learns is that it's not about the money. It's about, his relationships with other people and how valuable that truly is. So it's kind of the idea of like you can't put a price on a human life, especially not one that's well lived.
That's the movie where the main character is George Bailey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen the movie?
Bits and pieces. I think I've seen all of it, but not at once. But
I see.
it's one of my mom's favorite movies, and so that's why.
Ah,
Yeah.
amazing. I highly encourage you to give it a full watch when you can. It's really good, in my opinion.
Yeah, I normally don't go back that far in time, but uh, black and white things can still hold up.
Yeah.
We don't really need that much stimulation, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah. No, it understandable though. I think like just because films today are so saturated with colors and sounds and special effects that like watching anything like before the 80s, maybe even before the 90s is kind of I mean, it's certainly a very different experience, but it can certainly feel understimulating. I kind of grew up with like black and white and like older movies. That's a lot of what my parents watched when I was a kid.
Do you think in like 30 years movies will become even more stimulating, or have we saturated, as you said
Mhm.
earlier?
That I honestly have no idea. I could see it going either way, like with AI and everything. I certainly see a path forward for a lot more, a lot, a lot of different things that could be added to movies and films. So there's certainly an argument to be made for that. But I think also weirdly, like our society is starting more and more to value the past, kind of generally speaking. Like, I mean, we see all the time that like, different fashion trends are coming back in style. People are buying vinyls again. Um, I see people with like 70s and 80s haircuts and like mullets and I was actually just this week I was at an event where there were two instructors teaching people how to dance the Lindy Hop, which is originating from, I think they said, the 20s and 30s. So I think there's a resurgence of like a nostalgic resurgence of the past. So I could also see an argument for filmmakers actually starting to simplify what they're doing and focus more on the story rather than the effects and sounds and stuff. So I can see it going either way. Which way is better is up to the general public to decide. But to be fair, there also like is an argument to be made for like keeping some special effects around. Like I remember I saw. Have you ever seen the movie I, Tonya? It's with Margot Robbie, and
Oh,
she.
I haven't.
Okay, it's I can't remember when it came out. I think it came out in 20 maybe like 2017 or 2018. But it's based on Tanya Harding's life. She's a figure skater, and they had to use CGI special effects for one of the tricks that they needed to do. So like instead of hiring like a stunt person to do like a trick that like almost nobody has been able to perform, like they just did CGI, which is like pretty cool. And so, I mean, some special effects I have no problem with. Some I think are like overstimulating, but that's just me.
Yeah, it kind of went away, but I do remember the big trend of like middle school was that all the movies were coming out in 3D. Yeah.
Yeah, and like IMAX and everything, and there. I mean, it was. I don't think it was ever movies, but there were like experiences where you could like go see things in 4D,
Yeah.
and that was a lot. I don't know if we're gonna start trying to do that in movie theaters and stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, cool. I'm kind of jumping around a lot in
that's fine.
my interview questions, but can you tell me something you enjoy about being an only child?
Huh. I think something I enjoy is that being an only child, I think forces you to develop a certain sense of independence. And like, the age at which that happens and the way it happens differs for everybody. And obviously, just because I'm an only child doesn't mean I have to be independent, and vice versa. Just because someone has siblings doesn't mean that they can't be independent. Um, but I think what I like about being an only child is that I, yeah, my parents would, of course, support me if I needed them to, but they also, I think, taught me from a very young age to depend on myself, and to be a problem solver, be someone who can find a solution. And I also like that I'm good, or not good at, but I don't know how to put this. What I'm about to say is really more linked to being introverted than being an only child. But because I'm introverted, I like this about being an only child. I like having a lot of alone time. I like, and I've always been that way as a kid. I think I'm just naturally someone who, needs a quiet space to be alone with my thoughts. And so it was nice to be an only child because then it's not like I had siblings banging on my door or, a lot of people, running around making noise. Family gatherings weren't like they weren't very overwhelming. It was me and my parents, and they're also quite introverted. So, it was never an overstimulating environment. And I think I seek that out even as an adult. Like I just seek out my own space where I can just be alone. And so I appreciate that being an only child afforded me the opportunity to kind of learn that about myself and not take that for granted. Um, and I'll admit I also like not having to compete for attention. I think I would have, I mean, I'll never know, right? Because I'll never have siblings. But from what I've seen, at least from like childhood friends, is that it can be very difficult to have siblings because you might feel like you're being compared, or there's some theories circulating around about like how birth order can like impact the way you grow up, because maybe some parents treat their first child a little bit differently from their second or third, just depending on like comfort level and things like that. um and I don't know that I would have dealt with that very well. So I liked that, whether I was a hit or a miss, I was the only option. um, and yeah.
Yeah, I do think there's something there about birth order. As the middle child, I did kind of like my older brother got his way on a lot of things because he was the oldest, and my
Mm,
younger sister got her way on things because she was the
the
youngest.
youngest.
But I'll never be the oldest or youngest. It's not like I can age faster or slower than them.
Or
So,
yeah.
so I just always stuck in the middle. But
Yeah.
it has its the dynamic with my siblings has changed a lot from like
Hmm.
once we all were in college and stuff. Um, I don't get to see them that much anymore, so when we do hang out, it's usually more peaceful. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I think growing up does help you change your perspective on things, because I guess the other side of the coin too is like, okay, I see how my siblings are treated, and I feel some way about how they were treated, right? But the grass is always greener, right? So you get older and you start to realize like, okay, it's not like they led a charmed life either, like they probably had their own things they were struggling with, and maybe, you only saw like the net benefit, because it's something you wanted and didn't have, but with it came other issues. I don't know. So yeah, I think I've seen that too. Like when I'm saying like, oh, I saw it with my childhood friends. Like it's when we were children, right? As adults, I think their perspectives have shifted a lot, and their relationships have often for the better. So yeah, crazy what getting older does to you.
yeah. And I think looking back, especially with my brother, we weren't necessarily treated equally, but it was pretty equitable. Like, my
Hmm.
parents spent a lot of time because he was not the best student, so they were really trying to help him. But I didn't need their help, and I kind of didn't like it when they tried to help. So, um, but maybe being the middle child also pushes you towards the independence in a way.
Hmm.
Uh, well, cool. Um, so going back a little bit, why do you do what you do?
Um, I'm trying to think if I want to answer on like a why am I doing this specific job scale, or if I want to answer on like a philosophical why am I like in this field uh, kind of way. For I guess I can just do both if there's time. Um, so why I took this particular position. So it's actually not in a field that I did my PhD in. It's quite different, on in both in terms of the subject matter and the way I do it, if that makes sense. So I'm modeling now, but in my PhD, I was making measurements and using instruments. So it's very different from what I did in my PhD, which was why I wanted it. I wanted to do something different. I was tired of what I was doing in my PhD, and
Siloxanes, right?
yeah, yeah. Siloxanes, and then on a broader scale, like volatile organic compound emissions. And it's not that it's not interesting, it's just that I felt very boxed in, and I also didn't want to rely on my PhD advisor or his network to advance my career. So there were a few reasons why I wanted to tackle something completely different. It was to learn different skills. It was to just experience something new. It was to break out of kind of this path that would have been lined up for me if I had chosen to stay. And it was also because the supervisor is great. So now I'm working for a woman, not a man, and that already makes a lot of a difference for me. So that's already a good thing. And then I also joined because of the project. So the subject matter was always interesting to me. It was just not something I had really pursued as a PhD student. Um, and and so there was also like a climate change, like local climate action aspect to it that I really like. And so that kind of, I think, brings us to the broader reason why I'm in the field of environmental engineering and environmental science, which is that one, I think climate change is real. It is a very real problem, and it's affecting people. Well, not just people, but just the planet in ways that aren't deserved. I mean, like, that sounds dumb. What I mean to say is, like, it's affecting communities that are not perpetrating or perpetuating the problem. It's affecting biodiversity. It's affecting sea level. It's affecting things that have no say in whether they're affected or not. Um, and so I've always felt very passionately about that ever since I was a kid. And yeah, that's why I chose this field. And I like this local climate action policy aspect of the project I'm on, because I don't think that there's a one size fits all solution. I don't think you can just show up to any given city and say, hey, reduce your emissions of XYZ. I don't think you can do that. I think you do have to make more targeted plans. And I also think that, for example, for like energy, you can't say, okay, we're all switching to solar now, because some areas just aren't. There's no infrastructure for that. There's also maybe not enough sunlight to justify that. So I think plans have to be any sort of plan for greener energy or emissions reductions or anything like that has to be on a local scale. So yeah, it's just a lot of stuff I'm really passionate about.
Nice. Do you think Sweden is more prepared for climate change than the U.S.?
Definitely, yeah. For starters, there are much fewer, if any, climate change deniers. So that's already something. Their infrastructure is built around public transportation and bikes. So there actually are not that many cars, and even when there are, they're not like big, Ford F-150s or like big trucks that require a lot of gasoline. They're usually smaller cars. And to be completely transparent, I am kind of in a bubble because I'm in a university town and I'm in a department where everyone is an environmental scientist. So they're all maybe more conscious than the average person about, always using bikes or carpooling or taking the bus. But generally, I think Northern Europe in general, not even just Sweden, but Northern Europe is very centered around public transit and biking rather than cars. So that's one thing. They also have more of a focus on green energy. They use a lot of wind energy and greener ways of getting oil and gasoline for cars. And they're also really big on like trash sorting and recycling. So like the apartment I'm living in now, they have you sort your trash into like paper and cardboard, glass, hard and soft plastic, like that sort of thing, and then of course separate bin for like food waste. So they're really big on that sort of thing. They do it as much as they can digitally rather than printing on paper. And so I think just on a societal level, there's more of an emphasis on living your life in like a greener way. They use less plastic wrap too, like plastic packaging for their food in like grocery stores and stuff. And they don't use like preservatives or insecticides. And what else? I'm trying to think of like other differences I've noticed. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I know some places have a ban on single-use plastic. They don't have a ban on that, but they will make you pay if you need to get a bag if you don't think to bring your own. So they have things like that enforced that no one seems to really like argue against. No one seems mad about it. They're just like, yeah, okay, yeah, we want to be green. We want to be more. We want to do our part, basically.
Yeah, it sounds like you're missing that, or they are missing that component of all the people who feel threatened by the changes. And I don't know. I think a lot of the stuff you just said, it seems really hard to do here. Um, but I do think I too live in bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in the U.S., I mean, for one, cities are not built for public transit and they don't have good like bike or walking infrastructure, right? So trying to switch to that would require a major overhaul of the systems currently in place. And, I'm sure there would be people who would argue, well, if you're so environmentally friendly, like surely you are thinking about like how much will be emitted when we like destroy highways and rebuild our infrastructure and do this and do that. So like it's not even worth it, right? Some people will probably say stuff like that. And I mean, of course, it's not true. That sure, that's an initial cost, but it's for a long term investment. So um, but that's the argument I think a lot of people make is look at the initial cost, look at what it's going to cost upfront, and they don't think about the long term benefits. So certainly that sort of thing is difficult to implement. And then yeah, I don't know why in the U.S. we love our plastic wrapping so much. Why everything needs to have like 18 layers of plastic and why we need all these like chemicals and preservatives and stuff. I don't know how that happened, and I don't know how to. I think that also would require a big regulatory change that people are not ready for. Because I mean, stuff like the red and yellow dyes, that you see on processed foods, like that's just not a thing here. But like I can't imagine like the FDA or anyone being like, okay, I'm gonna ban this now, right? Like a lot of people in the U.S. would lose their minds. And I don't know why, because what is that color preservative adding to your life? Absolutely nothing. So yeah,
It's
I
an
agree with you. I
illusion.
think yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, illusion of choice.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, so I agree with you that it would be very difficult to implement some of these changes in policies in the U.S.
But we fight the long defeat, I guess, as Paul
Yeah,
Farmer says.
exactly.
All right. Um, is there anything you thought you would do by now that you haven't done?
In Sweden or in my life?
Just general.
Um, that is a really good question. I have to like think through what I thought my life was going to look like at this point. Um, I think as a kid, I thought that I'd have my life figured out by this stage. So for the listeners, I'm 27 right now, and I know that now I know that 27 is not an age where you have to have your life figured out. But as a kid, I was like, oh, in my 20s, that's when I'm gonna understand what my life is all about, and I'm gonna have a very clear purpose and a map for getting there, and I'm going to be married, have a family, have a house, whatever, like whatever I thought a normal family life was going to look like as a kid, right? um so I guess if you asked 10-year-old me what I thought I would be doing at age 27. Definitely did not think I was going to be living abroad. Um, and thought that I would probably be um, still in the U.S., maybe not where I grew up, but somewhere in the U.S. With a partner, uh, and just like a well established life and community, I guess. Um, which is not what happened, and I'm glad that that's not what happened. I like my life as it is. I like that it's still up in the air. I like that I have the opportunity to still figure things out. I don't think I really have anything concrete in terms of like, are there like certain activities or experiences I wanted to have by this point in my life. I think I just like kind of bought into um, this kind of old fashioned idea of like, oh, like you're a young woman, you need to find a partner, you need to find someone who's going to take care of you, and like that's not really how I was raised, right? That's how like maybe other people I was surrounded by thought, um, including other family members, not my parents, but other family members. They would never ask me like, oh, what are your dreams? Like, what are you interested in? What do you want to do with your life? It was always like, do you have a boyfriend? Do you want to have kids? How about now? How about now? Like it was those sorts of questions. And even now, still a little bit. So when I was a kid, I thought, oh, like that's how my life is supposed to go. I'm just supposed to find someone, basically. Um, and I haven't yet, which is okay. Um, because I think I found something more valuable. So I guess that would be the answer. It's not a very concrete response, but
I think it's a good answer. I think we expect too much certainty in our lives. Uh, so, more light question. Who is one of your favorite historical figures and why?
one of my favorite historical figures.
Yeah.
Oh, it's hard to say because I feel like when I was a kid, like in history class, we would learn about people like Abraham Lincoln, right? He was my favorite for a long time. Uh, because he was the one who freed who ended slavery basically, but like then you actually get into the nitty gritty of the historical details and you're like, oh well, he A didn't do that because he was a good person, and B, he didn't, it's not like he ended racism, like it's not like he solved the problem, he just you know stopped one symptom of the problem. So you very quickly learn that a lot of people are actually not as great as you think they are, which is also true of just now, right? It can be true of anybody. But I guess my favorite historical figure would be. I've forgotten like every name that I used to know.
There's usually one question in each of these interviews that are
Yeah.
kind of a stumper.
Well, this is mine because now I'm like, who do I even know as a historical figure? Like, who do I remember? Like, what is going on? Um, I guess I would say, for lack of a better answer at this time, I think I would say Jimmy Carter. Does that count? I think he's still alive, so I don't know if that really
Yeah,
counts as a historical
as long
figure.
as they have existed, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd go with Jimmy Carter then. For now, yeah.
Is it the peanuts or other stuff he did?
No, it's I like that he was focused on not intensifying or starting conflict. I like that he was always trying to find peaceful solutions to problems, even if he wasn't always successful. And what I also like about him is that he just seems like a genuinely good person. Like even now he's like what 99 or like no, he's not 100 yet, I don't think. But like anytime he does pop up in the news, it's always like, oh, he like did something really wholesome, or he's like volunteering or whatever. Um, that I like that about him more than I do like anything in particular he did in his presidency. It's more just that I think he's a genuinely good person, or at least is striving to be a good person.
A good man is hard to find. Flannery
Exactly.
O'Connor. All right, so this one is connected to that first question.
Mhm.
What is not important?
What is not important? This is going to sound a little privileged, I think, but at least to me, what is not important is like material goods. And I don't know how to put this exactly. I don't think money is important. I mean, it is important in society, right? You need it to survive. But it's also like a made up concept. And I also, and I, when I say money isn't important, what I mean is like, I don't need to be a millionaire to be happy or to have a good life. And I don't think anyone needs to have that amount of money. I think, and I also don't want to spend my life working towards having like an obscene amount of money. I want to work to live, not live to work. And I certainly don't want to live or work to make money. I want to be comfortable, obviously. Like I want a roof over my head. Um, and everyone should have that. But I don't think inherently money is important, if that makes sense. And then same thing with materials. I think that anything one can buy with a lot of money is not worthwhile. And again, that's coming from kind of a privileged place because I never experienced poverty, um, or being in such a tough financial situation that I didn't know how I was going to get, from one day to the next. So, I understand how my answer sounds. Um, and don't think that we should exist in a society where anyone is in the situation where they don't know how they're going to get, from paycheck to paycheck. But inherently, I don't think money is important, and I don't think material goods are important.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I also feel like for everyone to have enough money to get by, it would probably take the people who have the most money not having that money.
Exactly,
And
redistribution.
yeah. But
But the problem is that they don't want to redistribute it; they want to
yeah.
keep it. So
Yeah, it's not something I will solve in my lifetime, but
no, nor I. But we can hope. We can try.
I'm sure other people are trying too. So, all right. So b-wap. How do you want to be remembered / what is your legacy?
Mm, I want to be remembered as someone kind, someone who, really gives it their all in any kind of relationship or in anything that I'm doing, you know. Uh, yeah, yeah, I just want to be remembered as somebody who really like put an effort and uplifted others. I think that's an important thing. I certainly hope that I am not remembered as someone who made anyone feel less than. I want to, and I guess it's a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of egotistical of me to want to be remembered at all, right? Who am I to deserve to be remembered or to have any sort of legacy? But by those who know me, I would hope that I am remembered as someone who, like I said, is kind and was always looking out for other people and trying to make them, trying to make sure that they see the same value in them that I see.
I think I remember you that way. So
Oh,
you're
thank you. Thanks. That's good
you're
to hear.
you're doing it while you're still alive.
Look at me go.
All right. Well, this is the final question. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self, and do you think they would listen to you?
Oh, I'm going to answer the second part first. My 18-year-old self would not listen. She had, I mean, rightfully so, she had her own mind, but she was also incredibly stubborn and very set in her ways, and she was not going to listen to anybody. That I can tell you. If I were to give her advice, though, if I were to try, um, I think I would tell her um, that there's simply no way she's going to have it figured out. No matter what she thinks she knows, she's always at some point in her life, at different points in her life, she's going to encounter people, discover things, have experiences that are going to shift her worldview, shift her perceptions of different topics, shift her perceptions of herself. Um, and that what matters is not sticking to your beliefs or your idea of how things are supposed to go, but adjusting to new information and new experiences, but also like while still being true to herself. There's a way to be true to yourself that is not simply like this is the vision I have for my life and that's it. You know. So I think I would just tell her to not not freak out when things don't go as planned. I would maybe tell her to toughen up a little bit and prepare. Don't hopefully don't expect that life is going to throw terrible things at you, but be ready for it. And also be ready to support anyone who unfortunately did have something tough thrown at them. Um, and just, uh, be open to new worldviews and experiences. Yeah.
Good answer. I I think younger me also was very my way or the highway. I think flexibility is something that doesn't come necessarily naturally, and it's something we do have to in part learn. So
Yeah, I agree. Because, like, I don't know if this is your experience, but like growing up, and it wasn't just my parents, it was everybody. It was like, okay, when you're 18, you have to go to college, you're going to be an adult, you have to have it all figured out, you have to have a life plan, you have to know who you are as a person, you have to know what you want, you have to know how you're going to get it. And so, like, I did kind of have a plan, loosely, right? I had the plan of I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a degree in environmental engineering, and, I'll be an environmental engineer. That was my plan. I'm not an environmental engineer now, and that's okay. But I think it's very deeply ingrained in our society and in the way we function. And I think that's very harmful, because there are plenty of people who, for example, don't finish college in 4 years or don't go to college at all. And they're made to feel less than because of that. But it's like everyone is different, and everyone has different circumstances and also different strengths. You don't have to go to college to be successful. You don't have to want to go to college. Not everything is learned through books and classes. So I think this idea of, like, by the time you're 18, you have to know what you're doing is very harmful. And I think it certainly was for me, because I did think I had to know what I was doing. And so anytime I didn't know what I was doing, I felt like a failure. And that was, both external and internal, right? It was a cycle, what's the term? A positive feedback loop. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. And unlearning that was very tough. I'm still unlearning it, I think, because I still have those moments of like, oh my God, I finished grad school, which is great, but like, I'm in this temporary position with no idea what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like, what have I done? And I have to, take some time to like reset and think like, okay, it's okay that I don't know. It's okay to just see where life takes me and see what the next opportunity is and not plan for it. So
Taylor Swift has a line in one of her songs, how can a person know everything at 18 but nothing at 22? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very true sentiment, for me, I think. And I think it applies to everybody. I think that's pretty universal. She's very wise.
Yeah, every now and then she comes with those silver bullets,
Yep.
Well, all
That's how people
right.
like her.
Yeah, I would never spend that much money on a concert ticket, but
Oh, me neither, yeah.
she won't see this, so
What if this is the one she sees?
yeah, and she
What if it just
watches all
happens
the way
upon
to
her
the
algorithm?
end. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, damn, these two people wouldn't go to my concert.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
Yeah. It would feel nice to be noticed, though. Well, all right.
Certainly would, yeah.
So that has been the GRODCAST with b-wap. Is there anything you'd like to plug as we're heading out?
I don't think so. For those who've never been to Sweden, if you can afford to go, I certainly recommend it. It's very beautiful in the summer. Don't come in winter. It's cold and dark and windy and awful. But that's really it.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. I'm Young Greasy. This has been the GRODCAST, and we're out.